Hello everyone, this is Driss from CSS Ninja, and today I'm here with you for an overview of the Listkit template. So Listkit is a Alpine Js multi-purpose listing template, UI kit. So I'm here today to walk you through the basics and show you actually how the template works. So before starting, so like I said, the template is built on Alpine Js version 3. So you can easily find the documentation for Alpine, and I guess that if you bought that template, there's a high probability that you're already familiar with that framework. Anyway, we're not here to cover that today, and this just to show you that they have a really nice documentation site. So yeah, and of course you have the Listkit documentation that will help you get started, and it's as easy as clicking that button or that link to get access. So Listkit is a really, polished UI template. So for a start, we have more than 45 demos. We have some. We have a premium plugin which is bundled, Light Gallery JS. Of course, we have support, clean code, and structure, and you'll quickly come to see that it's a very modern project. So we have a lot of pre-built demos that you can start from. So I'll leave that up to you guys to discover the template. So you'll see that in terms of features, we have a really polished UI, a clean code base, Alpine JS as the main framework, version 3. We have HTML compilation with Panini, with a link to the docs here. We have some modular Sas based on SCSS, some pre-built pages that can actually cover a lot of use cases. The template, of course, is responsive on all kinds of devices, portrait or tablet mode. And yeah, we have some nice vectors included, and it's really easy to customize the theme colors. Actually, it's just changing the primary color variable to set up your brand color, and that's easy as that. And of course our support that you can access on our support portal, and we're very open to suggestions and discussions about new features and future updates. So yeah, we'll be waiting for feedback from you guys. And that doesn't go without saying that shortly, maybe in the next or the one after it update, we'll try to include a dark mode for this template, because this has become very common today. Alright, so I think we're ready to dive in the code structure. So first of all, I already have this template installed, so I'm not going to install it, but if when you have to do it, it's as easy as typing npm install or yarn install, and then wait for a short amount of time, wait for the dependencies to be completely downloaded and installed in the project. Okay, so since we have the template already installed, and that goes of course before you can use npm, and this is covered in the Listkit documentation, you'll have you need to have Node.js installed on your machine. So we have a minimum of Node.js 12 required for the template to work, and I would personally recommend Node.js 12.13.0. And of course, the template should work with higher versions of Node.js. It's fully tested up to Node.js 14. Okay, so let's look at the actual source code. So you might be familiar with some of our products. So for those who are familiar, I guess you'll be able to skip most of the video. But for others, let's start at the beginning, like we do for each product. So everything starts with our root files. So we have a package.json. So this is a core file in Node.js environment. So this lists your project dependencies and development dependencies. So this is the list where the dependencies are actually fetched from when you run npm install. Okay, so then you have the gulp file.js. So the template is based on gulp for compilation, and we have slightly less tasks that we have in other projects that, for example, are using jQuery, because we don't have to bundle all the JavaScript dependencies and all the CSS, because in here we have a pretty modern setup where using Browserify and Babelify, we're able to use the ES6 syntax, so to be clearer, imports, JS imports. Okay, so let's go through this quickly. We have a Sas Compilation Tasks for Bulma, but this is really optional if you want to compile the Bulma source separately. That's not what we're doing, but we're going to look at that after. So we have our main SCSS compilation that includes the Bulma source and all custom CSS that has been written for Listkit. We have our HTML compilation that is built upon Panini, which is a flat file compiler that you should already know if you know our products. Then we have some CSS, some additional CSS style sheets, mostly from plugins that we're compiling into a single file, which is called app.css. And our CSS, our custom SCSS, is compiled into another file. So we have two separate CSS files. And then we have some utility tasks that are used, to optimize images, to, set the development server, and create our JavaScript bundle, because all the JavaScript that we'll be writing in this template is in the end bundled and concatenated into a single file. That makes it a lot easier. And here we have our main watch task that is responsible for watching changes and reloading the page when you're in development mode. Alright, so that should be enough for the configuration files. I think we're ready to look at the source folder and see how things are organized. So first of all, we have the fonts folder. So in that folder, you can find all the static font file assets that live in here, because with on Envato Market, it is mandatory to include all the assets locally and not from a CDN. So we have those in here. Then we have the image folder where we have all our images, and this particular subfolder is the demo images that you can see on the demo, but is removed before uploading the final version to ThemeForest, because this is about enforcing the Envato submission guidelines. So we can't have any photos in the final download. So we have placeholders instead. But all the vectors and SVG stuff is still included in the download files. Okay, so then we have a pretty big part, which is the JavaScript. So first of all, let's look at the main file and see what happens in here. So you can see that I was talking about the ES6 syntax. So you can see it here in action. We have the imports of Alpine Js. So Alpine is installed via the package.json and is in our node modules. So we need to import it. So we import Alpine. We then import some Alpine plugins, which are Intersect. Intersect is used for interacting with DOM elements when they enter or leave the viewport. And Fern is actually an enhancement to the Alpine native stores, and it gives you the ability to create persisted stores, meaning that the values that are stored into your store are persisted even when the page changes. You need to, make a call to the store and change the value yourself, otherwise it won't change. Okay, so I'll leave that line for a little bit later. I'll go on. So we're then binding Alpine to the window global object. That's the way to do it, to get access to Alpine everywhere in our template. And then we're instantiating the plugins, so Intersect and Fern. And then we're instantiating our persisted store and initiating it with a single value, which is a Boolean, to handle the authentication demo. And then we're calling alpine.start to start the template. To start Alpine. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'll get back to that line. So if you're already familiar with Alpine JS, you should already know that it's a non-compiled language, and it uses some custom HTML attributes like xdata, x on click, or x on whatever event, JavaScript event. They have also some special directives like xtext or xbind and some others. So the main problem is that since the template HTML should be valid regarding W3C validation, this causes a problem because custom attributes that don't start with data dash are invalid. So it triggers a lot of validation errors. So we were able to find a workaround to this problem, because Alpine, it's not documented yet, but Alpine supports a prefixing method. So we're prefixing all the existing Alpine custom attributes with data dash. So xdata becomes data xdata, and for example x on click becomes data x on click. So I understand that can be a little bit annoying if you're used to the shorter Alpine JS. So in that case, I highly recommend that you get in touch with us so we can grant you access to our private GitHub repo, and our main branch doesn't have this custom prefixing. All right, so this is for the Alpine instantiation. So then we're you can imagine that we write some JavaScript for all sorts of components and UI elements that we have in the template. So all of this is scattered around the folders that we have in the JS libs subfolder. So we have the components, we have the forms, and we have the sections. So all you have in here is pretty much plugin instantiation or custom behaviors. And you should definitely know Alpine to understand what's happening. So this is actually how we write an Alpine function, is declaring a function and a return statement in the form of an object with properties that can have different types, that can be booleans, that can be strings, or even functions. And there's a lot of stuff you can do, but that's not the point of today's video. Okay. So you can see here that it seems that we're importing folders, but we're not. We're actually importing a bundle of JS files that are exported from a single index. So this prevents this file from getting very verbose, with a lot of import statements. To understand that, I'll show you practically what that means. So if I go into the libs components folder, you can see here that I have some subfolder for each type of component: accordion, back to top, glider, navbar, page loader, and I have an index.js file sitting at the root of the subfolder. And that's exactly, even if index is not declared here, but implicitly this is the file that I'm importing here in this statement. So let's look at the contents of the file. So the file itself is what we could call a barrel file. It's kind of a transition file that re-exports the content of the folder into a single file. So you can see here that we're importing that init landing navbar function from navbar landing here, because we're exporting here a init landing navbar function. So we're importing it here, then we are binding it like we did with Alpine to the window global element, so we can have access to this anywhere in our template. And then finally we're importing this into the main.js file, which is the main entry point. And that goes, it's the same for forms, for section, and then we're importing some various utilities that help us in the display of our pages. And then we have some demo stuff here that help us switch demo images and backgrounds and links, because the demo and the final product's behavior is slightly different. And we were also instantiating some basic components globally, so we can use them anywhere without worrying about having them in an Alpine function. It's more of traditional JavaScript. Okay, so there's not much to say more about this. You can explore the code and ask us some questions if you don't understand something, but that's pretty much the basics. So then I'll skip those for now. I want to talk about the HTML, but just a little later. So we have the Sas folder, which is the Bulma source files. You can see here that we're using the latest version, which is 0.9.3, and we're directly importing this source in our own custom SCSS folder. So you can see here in our main.scss, which is the one that gets compiled by the gulp file, we're first importing our own variables. For example, you can see here that we're overriding some Bulma basic variable. So if you want to override a Bulma variable, you don't have to do it into the source. So because we're directly pulling this from the package that we installed with npm, so it's better to do it here. You just write the same variable name that you have in Bulma and that you want to override, and you give it the value that you want. So here we're overriding the responsive breakpoints and telling that we want to disable the full HD screens that are very wide and not really fitting our purpose on this project. So like I said, we have our main SCSS files, our basic variables and color imports, then Bulma, then our custom helpers, and then all the files that are being used in the layouts, like the basis for the footer, for the hero, for the section, and then all single elements that we use, button, form elements, tags, components like accordions, date picker, hamburger, navigation, page loader, and of course sections. So this is the CSS for all separate website sections, and it's written so you can easily copy and paste sections to create your own pages. Alright, so this was for the main assets part. So let's talk a bit about the HTML system. So we're using Panini, which is a flat file compiler, and our pages are split into 3 parts that are being built into the final page that you can find in the dist folder when running the template or running the build command. So it starts with a layout. So a layout is basically the skeleton of your HTML page. You have your head tag with your style imports and your font imports, and then you have a body tag where all the magic happens. So this leads me to talk about partials. So you can see here this bizarre thing is a partial. So that's a chunk of HTML that is being rendered as this tag, so we don't have to repeat ourselves on every page. So all the partials are stored in the partials folder. So for an example, the page loader partial is stored in the page loader folder and pageloader.html. So basically, seeing that tag means that in the final page, it's that HTML that will be rendered. So that tag will be replaced by this. So you can create, of course, new partials when you want and when you need. The only thing you have to worry about is that your partial name should be unique. It doesn't matter in how much subfolders they are nested in, Panini will always find it. So you can have your page loader nested in several subfolders, it will always find it. So the only rule is unique names for partials. So you can see here we have the footer that we're putting in here, so we don't have to repeat it everywhere. A language selection modal and some scripts, our final bundle that is the result of our JavaScript compilation made by Gulp. And since we're using maps in the project, our Mapbox JavaScript library. Great. So now we know a little more about layout and partials. And the last thing I could say about that is that single partial like thing, which says body. So this one is a special partial. It doesn't refer to anything in this folder, in this partial folder, but instead it renders inside this tag the pages that we have here. So for an example, let's take one of these pages. So this is the careers page, and you can see here this bizarre little thingy in the top. So this is used to tell Panini which layout this page is using. So by saying default, that means that it uses the layout's default.html. If it was saying minimal, like I think the login page, you can see here, that means that it uses the minimal layout, which is a different setup, page setup, than the default one. So of course you can create your own layout and customize them the way you want. So you need to reference the name of the layout file without the HTML extension here to tell Panini which layout to use for that page when it will render it. Then you specify the page title, and that will be as well rendered with the final page. Of course, inside your pages, you can use partials like in the layouts, and you can as well use partials inside other partials. So that's very useful. And for example, this page, we only have the content here. I'm gonna show you what you get at the end. So the careers page, if you look in the this folder, so the result of the compilation, so this folder gets regenerated each time you make a change in the HTML, the CSS, or the JavaScript. So looking at the careers page, it's going to look a lot different than this one. So this one will have the proper doc type, the head tag, and the body tag. Here our page loader partial rendered into HTML, and our page inserted inside our body tag. And of course, at the bottom of the page, we'll find our footer somewhere. Where is it? I'm gonna look for it. Oh, maybe that means that this page doesn't have a footer. Oh yeah, of course, it has a particular footer, or yeah, the footer is specified in here. So yeah, that doesn't matter. But yeah, I guess you got the main idea. So every part is being, pasted along with the others to create the final pages that are being served and put into the dist folder, as well as the compiled assets like the bundle.js and the app.css and main.css, which are your main CSS files. Alright, so I think that should be enough for a template overview. You should by now have a basic understanding about how the template works, and we'll be of course there to answer your questions and support you on our support portal. So hoping that you appreciated this video. See you soon on CSS Ninja. See you guys.